Today we're joined by Michael I from Ares. Ares is a global alternative investment manager operating in the credit, private equity, and real estate markets, and they've recently expanded into the blockchain markets. Michael, nice of you to join. Would you like to give us a brief background on yourself?
First of all, I wanted to say thank you for the interview and glad to be here. But anything I say just represent myself, does not represent Ares. So I started my career at Goldman Sachs as a investment banker. I subsequently work at a fund called PAG for the real estate private equity arm. And then now in the past 4 years, I work for Ares in Asia for private credit investment.
Awesome. So as I mentioned before, you and Ares has also entered the blockchain space, as a lot of other private equity firms and asset managers have. So what's something you've seen, like what's the application of digital assets and blockchain that you've seen affecting the general payments industry?
For the Asia part, we are not investing anything in crypto, but in the US and Europe, maybe. I don't know. But in Asia part, we are mostly invested in traditional finance assets like credit and equity of a company. But for me, myself, I am a believer of the decentralized future for the world because, as everyone can see, especially in COVID, the politicians in some of the countries are really not doing a good job. They change their mind 180 degrees from time to time. But as a crypto protocol, it won't change. So that's the beauty of it, number one. And number two, a lot of countries are still suffering. The currencies are not backed by a strong political power, although all the political powers change their minds, but some are stronger, some are even weaker, so that their currencies are not stable. So that's why I also see the cryptocurrency could expand to a lot of people with need, really in a decentralized fashion, because the banks and the current financial systems are mostly controlled within the current political economy system. But I think it's going to be outdated in the short future because the people can, really benefit from the value that can be freely transact on the blockchain without someone monitoring it, can really make the value flow to the best talent and then the best projects and then the best use to change the world.
Yeah, that's a great point you brought up about crypto adoption, at least in Latin America. What we've seen is at least the large ones such as Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, they've adopted crypto because their currencies or their native currencies are devalued. And a larger trend we're seeing is, and that actually leads into what Zebec is doing as well with global remittance. What we've seen is a lot of people in South America with confidence in an asset that's going to give them stability. And what we've seen is the ability to use USDC or stable coins has become pretty prevalent in that region. So what Zebec has shifted our focus to now is how can we help people in the US that are immigrants from these countries send money back home? And global remittance has become the focus of our efforts now. And we think that trend is going to, we think crypto is going to carry that trend for the foreseeable future. We think it's going to be the new norm. So that's a great point you bring up about devalued currencies and how they're looking for other options and other alternatives that provide them more stability and confidence in the market.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But also just as a TradFi participant for my first 15 years of my career, I do see the current RWA trend is pretty significant because the biggest asset in the world, if we think about it, is the US dollar, which already been perfectly done by USDC and USDT. The next biggest instrument in the world financial system is the risk-free rate, basically the US Treasury. With that, all the other risks can be priced. As a credit investor, we see, every credit, it's a risk-free rate plus a premium. So without the risk-free rate being identified on chain, it's hard to price any risk, which, the risk premium was looking for by the investors to be compensated to invest in certain securities or certain companies, which I think the whole process of building the financial system on chain is an inevitable process, which is starting right now. Obviously, a lot of other interesting trend in the crypto world, but from a traditional finance background, I feel what we did in the most basic infrastructures of the world financial system has not been put on chain, which, it's crying for being processed, which some of the companies are doing right now. And that's, I think, is the part that I'm most interested in.
Yeah, and that's something I think we've seen a lot of large asset managers also shift towards. For example, I think BlackRock recently announced that they're focusing more on the RWA and tokenization space. And we've seen them make some large investments in the space in assets such as Ondo and a few others. So what we're seeing now is a larger trend of adoption, I guess you could say, into real world assets. And what this is doing is allowing more money from international regions to flow into countries you wouldn't typically have access to. So for example, if you have an asset in the US that mimics a treasury bill, people all over the world in Asia, India, China, Nepal can be able to access that as well. And I think this just allows for a freer flow of money, which another one of Zebec's goals and values. And that's another focus we're taking as well. We're focusing on real world assets and how we can bridge that gap between countries and allow this free flow of money. So that's a great point you brought up.
Yeah, if you just look at Tether, right? So they make $6 billion, more than 2/3 of that coming from the yield on the treasury side that they use as a collateral for the USDT coin. But that yield should belong to the customers, belong to the investors, right? Who hold this stable coin or hold this dollar. So I think that's something need to be democratized, or something needs to be returned to the investor.
So shifting directions then from more of the blockchain applications in RWA and tokenization, let's focus more on the payment side now. What's a use case of this blockchain technology we just mentioned for payments? How do you think, we mentioned global remittance earlier, what do you think are some other applications that we'll start to see with these new innovations in blockchain and DPIN and smart payments?
I think the cross-border payment is a very, very good example. I wanted to share, experience that I have on myself, right? So I bought into ICO in 2017. It was a scam, but, as a lot of other investments at that time. But at the liquidation of that, the target company, it's monitored by my group of my friends, right? That's why we made the investment in the first place. But then they were telling me, there's nothing in the company except a few Ethereums, right? So we just split the Ethereum based on the investment that we made. So I just gave them a hard wallet number, and then I just forgot about it. And then recently, when I started to be more interested in the crypto world, I look at my wallet, then the Ethereum become $3,000. So at that time it was $20 when I got it. So the investment came back, and then also that money is there, and then I wanted to buy something, which I used, the first token that I used this to buy is ZBC. Before it's called ZBCN, right? So before the migration, I bought some. Then that's the first time I started to use the wealth, if you will, on chain to transact, to buy other tokens. And then it just, I registered an exchange with my email and can just buy like instantly. So that sounds like to me, as it's a really, really a revolutionary move that, I don't need Bank of America, or I don't need some other banks to tell me if I can transfer this value from my wallet to a exchange and buy something. You can say for speculation or for investment purposes. That process is very significant, right? So think about it, then we're not controlled by any government. We're not monitored by any establishment, if you will, that they can, allow you to do this and not allow you to do that. And we can basically transact something in big value. That to me is the future, right? So the people on this protocol or on chain should have the freedom to do whatever they want with their own money, with their own values of their storage of tokens. So that's a way which I think working towards the general good of the civilization, that's something I think it's an inevitable trend that will just continue.
I guess let's focus on one specific use case here. So you mentioned being able to transact freely and across regions. So cross-border remittance, basically. So the typical issue that people face now is that if they want to move money instantly across the world in a matter of seconds, you're faced by a few issues. One, if you go to your local bank like Western Union, you're either paying high fees, you're worried about long transaction times, and you're worried about security. So those are the main three issues people face when it comes to cross-border remittance. And what we see now is with the global financial infrastructure being disrupted by blockchain and crypto, cross-border remittance through products such as what Zebec offers, this allows you to transact instantly at much lower fees, and it's a lot more secure since it's on the blockchain. So what we're seeing is this Web 2, call it, process that most people go through for cross-border remittance is now being replaced by this Web 3 application that has more uses and just gives more confidence in payments, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. And another point I want to make is the liquidity, like 24/7 liquidity for any of the tokens, basically, right? But obviously, there's limited regulations on this field, the crypto world. But also, I think that really direct the best resources to the best company. And they're just thinking about the time, the robber baron age for America, why these companies can just grow, a economy out of the very preliminary stage of the industrial revolution for America, and then to grow to such big companies like the Standard Oils and the Morgan Banks. These players, just because there's no regulation, right? The government is so small. Before the First World War, the American government is so small, so that you can say there's scams, you can say there's robber barons to take advantage of people, but they're also created very, very big companies that people can benefit from generations to generation. So I think that's what's happening on the blockchain. The best companies will continue to attract money, and then the top 100 list of the tokens is actually very, very transparent. In any part of the world, you can just get on and see those tokens, right? I think a track record for someone to do a long-term business in this unregulated world, if you're on the right idea with the right team, continue to push through, there's a chance you can build really, really big businesses on blockchain. So that's another point I feel really exciting.
Let's go back to what you just mentioned about the top 100 coins being so transparent. Do you think, let's back a little, we have the S&P 500, we have the NASDAQ, we have exchanges that list the top X number of stocks in the traditional equity space at any point in time. You think it's far-fetched to say that we'll have an ETF of the top 500 digital assets over the next few years?
Well, I think you always start with one and then go to 500, right?
Well, so now we have the Bitcoin.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's just
Ethereum is next.
Yes. In Hong Kong, they're discussing Ethereum. Yeah, I think that's, you have one, you have two, when it's going to hit 100, I think at some point, but you have to have 100 solid companies, right? If you look at the, S&P 500 were something, these are very, very solid company with long-term track record, right? As an investor, track record is everything, right? So if we look at these, Bitcoin has been there since 2009, or, the longer the name prevails, and then still doing well, and then there's a clear record that you can go back to and look what happened to this coin and that coin. They can say this in a short period of time, but can they deliver, and are they doing the right thing? Every coin you can easily see. And then if a bunch of company become stable for a while, then I feel that's the time for the real institutional money to flow into this ETF, if you will. I believe that will be created at some point, but maybe top 5, top 10 to start with. That's number one. And number two, you mentioned that, some company are listed in NASDAQ, some company are listed in NYSE, or some company listed in Copenhagen, some company listed in Germany, some in UK. The top 100 coin is everything on coin market cap, right? It's this very centralized place for all the world to look at. I think that will give the effect of the winner takes more, because it's just so easy to track these names, right? One part, you can see a lot of research and then the history of these companies. So that's why I say it's kind of transparent compared to the traditional securities. You have to look through everywhere and then to really, to compare, right? But in here, for investments, 50% is what you like about the company, but also 50% is relative value. If there's other companies doing the similar things, why you invest A and not B? But the crypto world, for this part, I think is transparent. That's what I mean.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think what we'll start to see is once more large asset managers begin to be more transparent about these transactions that they're making in the crypto space, whether it comes to buying, holding a lot of Bitcoin or Ethereum. I think, that's what drove adoption during this we experienced a few months ago. So I think as long as we keep seeing these large asset managers make these transactions and these investments, it's going to drive adoption for the normal retail investor. And I think over time, as large asset managers start to see more use cases for these assets and start to make larger investments, I think retail investors will follow, and this will lead to a lot more, say, wider adoption for crypto, which will, in the end, in my opinion, at least, lead to an ETF for the top 100 or top 500 digital assets, given where we are at any point in time.
Agreed.
So last question then to wrap this up, what do you think is going to be the iPhone moment for widespread adoption of digital assets? I know we just mentioned these large asset managers making these investments, and hopefully retail investors will follow, but what's your opinion on what the iPhone moment will be?
The iPhone moment, good question. iPhone, it's a platform, right? So the App Store, with the democratized access to a lot of developers, like software developers, like app developers, that make iPhone, right? But also Steve Jobs' design, all these kind of hardware products, it's also important. So in my view, I think DeFi, maybe DePIN, or RWA is also part of you put the financial world on chain. I think these specific areas with some sort of a breakthrough, if that come, and you said, right, wider adoption, for the retail investors coming into this world, I feel that's the moment. For now, I think that Bitcoin, it's already reached the Bitcoin's iPhone moment, right? So, the holding this can be a substitute to holding gold. I think it's already, pretty clear to a lot of people's mind, right? It's just that the more project need to come out to lead this process and then to be, those, killer apps, right, on iPhone, right? You watch the movie BlackBerry. So what iPhone did, it's, the same as BlackBerry, but also with a better demonstration, and then the open source or the open platform for other guys. So I think some of the, good killer apps on chain, but also open up the access or the further development for new teams and new projects, just like what Solana did, right? That's why Solana pumped up that much. It's something we'll look for, right? The more of these kind of things come up, the more credibility will come to the, on-chain world. Then I think that's the time for the iPhone moment to evolve.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, I think this wraps up our discussion. I think it was great hearing your opinion on RWA and payments and blockchain use cases. I think this is a topic we're starting to see that's more prevalent in the space, given wider adoption and Bitcoin, Ethereum being more in the news per se. So it's great hearing your opinions and your views on that.
Yeah, thank you for the time. I just want to make one closing point. My personal experience related a lot in the real estate investment world, in mostly in Asia. So my sense of the comparing to real estate to crypto is that, I think we're in a stage of the civilizations evolving a lot. The new inventions like the iPhones are not many in the recent years. So can the world as it is support this many people? Basically everyone, will have the need for fixed asset, that's real estate. I think the answer is no, right? I think at the current level of civilization, we may not be able to support as many people. You can see some of the Asian countries have the newborn rate falling from cliffs, right? That really tells the current way the city has been built out, where the relationship been held in the society cannot support that many people. So the fixed asset, in my mind, it's become less favorable for investors. But on the other side, liquidity is on everyone's mind. So crypto really have liquidity. You can say some of it is good, some is bad, but at least everything has liquidity. So that's what I believe in this current environment, that crypto is a very, very good way for people to diversify from the traditional investment. So then I feel, crypto really giving people freedom, that really emancipating the human race. I think that's the ultimate driver for the wider adoption of crypto.
Yeah, and I think as people start to see more stability in the space, there'll be more confidence for investing in these assets, given that there's such a wide range of applications. So as we mentioned, I think crypto and digital assets are the future of money, basically, and that's something we're excited to see. So, Michael, thanks again for hopping on our episode of The Future of Money. We'd love to hear your views and hope to have you again in the future.
Thank you.